Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Iran's axis of resistance against Israel faces trial by fire. She lost her home, had to send her kids away, but keeps reporting on Gaza. Israeli troops come under fire as they raid main Gaza hospital. What role does Syria play in the Hamas-Israel conflict? Belize joins diplomatic backlash against Israel over Gaza bombardment. Iran's axis of resistance against Israel faces trial by fire. Reuters. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has told the head of Hamas that Iran will not enter the war on its behalf, according to Iranian and Hamas officials. Iran will continue to lend Hamas its political and moral support. Hezbollah, too, was taken by surprise by Hamas attack last month. Its fighters had to be rapidly called up and were not even on alert in villages near the border that were frontlines in its 2006 war with Israel. The unfolding crisis marks the first time that the so-called axis of resistance has mobilized on multiple fronts at the same time. Hezbollah has engaged in the heaviest clashes with Israel for almost 20 years. Iran-backed militias have targeted U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. Yemen's Houthis have launched missiles and drones at Israel. The conflict is also testing the limits of the regional coalition, whose members have differing priorities and domestic challenges. She lost her home, had to send her kids away, but keeps reporting on Gaza. Al Jazeera. Khala al-Khalidi, a journalist from Gaza, has been working tirelessly since the latest conflict began, reporting for several different news channels. She is one of many journalists who have based themselves at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, as it is one of the few places in the region with a reliable internet connection. After her office was evacuated, al-Khalidi worked from home, conducting live interviews over the phone. When her husband told her that their neighborhood was about to be bombed, al-Khalidi had 20 minutes to pack her belongings and leave. The couple and their 4 children stayed at al-Khalidi's parents' house in Gaza City for a week, but during this time they discovered that their own home was destroyed. The family eventually moved to al-Maghazi refugee camp, where al-Khalidi continued to work. Her husband has not worked as a prosecutor since the conflict began, and has been a great support to his wife. Despite the difficulties of working during a war, al-Khalidi is determined to keep going, and is motivated by the hope that she will be able to announce the liberation of Palestine to the world. Israeli troops come under fire as they raid main Gaza hospital. Wall Street Journal. Israeli troops have entered Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, after warning that Hamas was using it to hide underground complexes and command centers. Israel alleges that the hospital, which has been sheltering thousands of displaced families, contains hostages, including women, children and elderly people. A senior Israeli military official said that troops had killed 4 militants during the firefight on their way into the hospital and concrete evidence of Hamas presence had been found. Israel has been urging residents of Gaza City, including hospitals, to evacuate to the south of the enclave due to the danger of Israeli military operations. A senior Israeli official said that the military was facilitating the evacuation of the hospital, but that Hamas was preventing this. Legal experts said that hospitals lose protection under international law if they are being used by militants, but that any attack on a hospital requires sufficient warning and a clear deadline. The UN Secretary-General has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. What role does Syria play in the Hamas-Israel conflict? Deutsche Welle. Syrian activists have expressed shock at Syrian President Bashar Assad's appearance at a special summit in Saudi Arabia on the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Activists claim that Assad is responsible for war crimes, displacement, and hundreds of thousands of deaths in Syria. At the summit, Arab leaders accused Israel of violating international humanitarian laws and committing war crimes against civilians in Gaza. Activists argue that Assad's presence is hypocritical, given his own record of violence and brutality. During the civil war in Syria, Assad's forces targeted Palestinian civilians in the Yarmouk district, which was referred to as Syria's Gaza. Last year, after a decade suspension, the Arab League invited Assad back into the fold. While the Syrian government has expressed solidarity with Gaza, it has refrained from large-scale escalations against Israel. Analysts note that the Syrian government is a weak actor, surviving the civil war thanks to military support from Iran and Russia. Belize joins diplomatic backlash against Israel over Gaza bombardment. Al Jazeera. Belize has suspended ties with Israel due to its indiscriminate bombing of the Gaza Strip. The government of Belize has recalled its ambassador and retracted its request for accreditation for its honorary consul in Tel Aviv. Belize has condemned the Israeli military's attacks on Gaza and their blocking of aid, and has called for an immediate ceasefire and unimpeded access to humanitarian supplies into Gaza. This move follows similar actions by other Latin American states, as well as several Middle Eastern and African states. Informed solidarity, why thousands hit Kerala streets for Palestinians. Al Jazeera. In Kerala, southern India, thousands of people are gathering in public spaces to protest against the actions of Israel in the Gaza Strip. Demonstrators have been calling for an immediate ceasefire and condemning Israel for their alleged war crimes. Kerala has a strong connection to the Palestinian cause due to its historical ties to the Arab world, as well as having a majority of Indians working in the Middle East. Kerala is also known for having a higher Human Development Index than the rest of India, as well as a literacy rate of 93.91%, compared to the national rate of 74%. People in Kerala have a long history of supporting and protesting for various causes, such as protesting against the apartheid regime in South Africa and the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. The Palestinian cause has a particularly strong following in Kerala, with political parties such as the Indian National Congress and the Communist Party of India, Marxist, criticizing the Indian government for their support of Israel. The people of Kerala have a strong sense of solidarity with the Palestinian people and believe that the struggle for Palestinian independence is similar to India's fight against British colonial rule. An SOS call from Gaza. Al Jazeera opinion. Ghada Karmi, a Palestinian from Gaza, writes about the ongoing crisis in Gaza caused by Israel's war. She discusses the three simultaneous crises that have been created: the crisis experienced by individuals in the besieged strip, the crisis of conscience that has seemingly taken over the international community, and the global crisis resulting from the collapse of mechanisms to protect human rights. Karmi states that there is very little that she can do to help those who are under siege and under attack in Gaza, but she still desperately tries to do something. She describes the many SOS messages that she receives every day from Gaza and the desperate pleas for help from families who are trapped and unable to escape. Karmi explains that this is not just a crisis in Gaza, but a crisis of conscience for the international community who have ignored the desperate plight of civilians in Gaza. Finally, she states that there is a global crisis in the systems and mechanisms designed to protect civilians, as all international institutions have proved impotent in offering justice and help to the Palestinians. Joe Biden's meeting with Xi Jinping and Markwayne Mullins' Senate confrontation, morning rundown. Yahoo! President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to meet in California. The bill that could avert a government shutdown heads to the Senate. And NASA says a tool bag is floating through space. Lebanon's struggling hospitals could collapse if war escalates, doctors fear. Reuters. Lebanon's healthcare sector is being pushed to the brink as a result of the escalating conflict on the southern border with Israel. Lebanon's economic collapse in 2019 left its public hospitals barely able to cope in peacetime, and now the conflict is pushing them into a new crisis. Doctors fear that the latest Middle East war could stretch the healthcare sector beyond breaking point. Many hospitals are already struggling due to a lack of staff and fuel to operate generators. If the fuel runs out, the hospitals will have to close. Bowen, hospital raid comes as clock ticks on war. BBC. The main hospital in Gaza City, Al-Shifa, has become a symbol of the war in Gaza, as it is both a site of mass casualties and damage caused by Israeli airstrikes, as well as a place where people seek shelter and medical assistance. The hospital has been facing a lack of fuel, which has hindered its ability to provide necessary medical care. Despite Israel allowing in some fuel, it is only to be used to refuel UN lorries, and the entry of fuel for hospitals and water facilities remains banned. The international community has started to shift its tone, with the US, UK, and France expressing concern over the number of Palestinian civilian casualties. Israel is aware of this shift and is using a strategy of continuing its military objectives until its allies pressure them to stop. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you the latest news updates. Today, we have witnessed the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas intensify, with Iran's axis of resistance facing a trial by fire. We also heard the inspiring story of Khala Al-Khalidi, a journalist from Gaza who continues to report despite the loss of her home. Israeli troops have entered Gaza's largest hospital, raising questions about the use of medical facilities in the conflict. The role of Syria in the conflict has also come under scrutiny, as activists express shock at President Bashar Assad's appearance at a summit on the Hamas-Israel conflict. Belize has joined the diplomatic backlash against Israel, suspending ties due to the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. In Kerala, India, thousands of people have taken to the streets to protest against Israel's actions. And finally, we received an SOS call from Gaza, highlighting the desperate situation faced by civilians and the need for international action. Now, let's dive into these stories and analyze what they mean for the ongoing conflict. The mobilization of the Axis of Resistance marks a significant development, as it shows the interconnectedness and coordination among various groups opposed to Israel. However, their differing priorities and domestic challenges could strain this coalition. As for Khala al-Khalidi, her determination to report amidst personal loss is a testament to the resilience of journalists in conflict zones. It is crucial that their voices are heard, as they provide vital information and ensure transparency. The Israeli troops' entry into Gaza's largest hospital raises ethical questions about the use of medical facilities in warfare. While hospitals lose protection under international law if used by militants, any attack on a hospital requires proper warning and a clear deadline. The presence of President Assad at the summit on the Hamas-Israel conflict has sparked controversy, given his own record of violence. It highlights the complexities and contradictions of regional politics. Belize's decision to suspend ties with Israel demonstrates the growing international backlash against Israel's actions. It also reflects the global call for an immediate ceasefire and unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza. The protests in Kerala, India, show the strong support for the Palestinian cause, driven by historical ties and a sense of solidarity. Finally, the SOS call from Gaza reminds us of the urgent need for action to protect civilians and uphold human rights. These stories paint a complex picture of the ongoing conflict, with regional and international dynamics at play. It is crucial for us to stay informed, engage in discussions, and question the actions of all parties involved. So, my dear viewers, what are your thoughts on these developments? Do you have any questions or perspectives to share? Let's keep the conversation going and work towards a better understanding of this complex situation. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.